Hi there. As a man getting older, two things are going to happen, and one of which has already happened. Your bladder gets smaller, and your prostate gland gets larger, which basically means that you go to the loo more often, and when you get there, less happens. So by the time you get to an old age, I'm 61, so I'm not quite there yet. You're living in the loo basically, and I think this is well. Uh, the bladder side is true for women as well, depending on childbirth, I think. Anyway, what to do? But I was last night I was in the toilet, and many great things, ideas come to me in the toilet, as they might do to you. One of the things that I thought of was this thing about release and relief from tension, and so using urination as a metaphor for what's going on in this world and the lower worlds. Basically, you start off in a neutral state, and your bladder is empty, and then gradually your bladder fills up during the morning or evening, and your neutrality, as it were, is decreasing over time as the urgency to go to the loo increases. So the tension in the bladder is detected by the nerve, which is fired by the valve at the bottom of the bladder, and that's telling you basically that you want to go to the loo, and this urgency increases until you get to the loo, and provided your prostate gland isn't playing up, you urinate, and at the moment of urination, you return to the neutral state of having an empty bladder, obviously. And in a way, this is what happens pretty much with a lot of biological processes, macro processes, one might say, where basically you start off at a neutral state, you increase tension, and then you release on that tension. You go back to being a neutral state again, and this goes round and round and round. And in the case of the bladder, let's face it, it keeps going for decades and decades like this until it finally claps out as you get to a certain age, which is natural, which is part of nature, um, part of the lower worlds. And this is an algorithm that's been set up for millions of years in various millions of different ways. Urination is just one example. On a more sort of elevated note, yoga, for example, works on the principle of neutral state. You start off preparing to go into the posture. You go into the posture, and there is tension. You establish what they call bandha, which is sort of word for bondage. And increase, and this, you hold the bandha, you hold the yoga posture in hatha yoga, and then you release, and you go back to the neutral state again, and you think of sexual intercourse follows the same basic algorithm. Decrease in neutrality, increase in tension, urgency to go, and release of and a returning to neutrality. Um, but as I was going to the loo, I suddenly thought to myself, what if in heaven, in the supernal realms, the realms of the transcendental God, um, what? Well, first of all, a ridiculous idea. What if you had um, release before tension? Well, that's impossible, isn't it? Because looking at it causally, you've got to have your tension before you have your release. I would have thought, and you know, sort of A causes B kind of thing. By thinking about B causing A, whereas release comes before there is tension, I then thought to myself, well, what if you are released from all tension, And at the moment of release or relief, when you would normally return to a neutral state in this world, you suddenly, by some means or another, um, well, either gradually or suddenly, instantly, or at death, you experience an infinite release, an infinite relief through what they call liberation or moksha. This is putting it in Hindu terms rather than Gnostic terms. In which case you'd experience Sit Sat Ananda, and Sit is pure consciousness, Sat is pure being, and Ananda is pure bliss. Now, taking this down a level, a considerable level, to the bladder again, as you urinate, your physical tension is released, and this is experienced as a feeling of relief. And maybe a cognition occurs, like, for example, you have the thought, "Oh, that's better." Thank God for that, sort of thing. And as you urinate uh, efficiently, as one might say, and so basically, the in terms of moksha, what's happening is that this cognition, "Oh, thank God that's over with," or "Oh, that's good," is translated to sit, and you have pure consciousness, which goes with the pure feeling of bliss, which is the feeling of relief, of release. And then you have like the actual release itself from the physical plane or the physical body, as it were. And this sits at Ananda, this feeling of I've done it, a feeling of relief, and the relief itself, the actual reality of the relief, is extended infinitely, which is represented by this infinity sign. So basically, the actual moment of release and relief are extended infinitely. But because in the infinite has no, well, because you with no sense of time anymore, time means nothing. This moment it becomes timeless. So it never becomes a drag. You might, when I think of infinity, sometimes I think, oh my God, that sounds terrifying, terrible, terrifying, because you'd experience infinity. It would never stop. But the point is that time ceases to exist. So this split moment of release becomes extended into the infinite, and it's like as if it's a moment. You're just experiencing the moment, the aha moment, or the oh, thank God for that moment, and it never stops. But you experience it, inverted commas, as a single moment. But this single moment is in fact infinitely long. So, and what do you care about that, since time ceases to mean anything anyway? Notice space doesn't, you still have space. So within this moment of release, you could explore all the 9 quintillion planets that exist in perhaps the supernal triad, the supernal realms, or even beyond, beyond this physical realm, where there are 9 quintillion planets. There may be like 18 quintillion planets, or infinite number of worlds, each of which you can explore, because they exist as space, even though time has ceased to exist, or time is just a moment. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, really, because I'm only talking about this one single moment of pure consciousness, pure beingness, and pure bliss, the bliss of relief or release, and a single moment extended out into the infinite space. So that's basically, I thought and as you know yourself, if you've been a long time without going to the toilet, and you do urinate, it's a tremendous relief. And the feeling of relief is there, the actual physical sensation of release, and the consciousness of that release, the moment of, oh, thank God for that, sort of thing, as a cognition, comes into play, and that becomes infinite. That feeling, that really. So That's why, infinite bliss is exactly what it says on the tin. An infinite, generated by infinite consciousness and infinite beingness. That is the actual fact of release from the lower worlds. So this is kind of like the half the story, because after that, maybe you can experience space without time. So you could then, within this moment of release, which has become infinite, you then also have the ability to travel across space, and to visit or discover each point of the infinite space, as a location. Uh, but I'm not sure whether one can conceive this, and whether there's such a conception is, well, logic has nothing to do with it, but whether it's possible to conceive of this. I mean, it's possible to conceive of anything, but it doesn't mean to say it's true, right? And I know that. I'm not stupid. I actually do know that. So maybe we're talking about a metaphor here, in the fact that one experiences a moment of release from everything. Um, a sort of here and now moment, without necessarily there being some sort of metaphysical thing that this aha moment is pointing to. So it's possible that when you die, there's nothing. It's just oblivion, and that's okay, because within life itself, we have this little um, pure moment of release and relief, which happens on a huge scale, rather than just being focused on the toilet, sort of thing. And we have a kind of like, we release from everything, from all tension, which has increased over the years. And our neutrality has been destroyed over the years. But we don't go back to being neutral. Well, not neutral in the same way. We go back to being neutral, but we go back to being aware of this release that has occurred, and it follows us around, as it were. We take away this little mini release or mini relief. Like in the toilet, you would experience this relief and release, and then you'd go on your way. But with the Gnostic experience, you wouldn't just go back to being neutral again. You would go back to being neutral, but you are changed. You are changed forever by the experience. It has affected you, mind, body, and spirit, and the effects uh, might actually last your entire lifetime, however long that is. So basically, I hope I've shown that one can sometimes be doing something mundane, like washing up or going to the toilet, and you can have a metaphysical moment. You can have a moment of metaphysical speculation, which in itself is nice, is comforting, is rather is of great value existentially, even if, of course, as I said before, there is no metaphysics, and death is death and life is life, and there isn't anything afterwards, as it were. But still, you can have a here and now moment, a moment of gnosis, when you realize that this, you don't have to go back to what you were before. That's another big point about this. You go on, as it were, from this state of release to further states of release, as it were. And perhaps metaphysically, they don't stop there, sort of thing. Anyway, it's good to know, I suppose, as well, finally, in that this is the way the world works. The pendulum swings from left to right, and it goes through the middle, and eventually, of course, it reaches neutral, and requires an external force to make it move again, following Newton's second law of mechanics. And it's good, interesting to look at yourself, at your body, the way your body works with this algorithm, and the increasing, tension, and then the sudden release and back to neutrality. it's good to look at it, look in yourself and look at this and look at nature and look at society in this sort of insightful way.